right, joining us now, again, political analyst Matt Klink. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Lou.
So we spoke earlier, and now we know that Charlie has passed. Just devastating news.
Yeah, it really rips at your gut. You know, obviously I didn't know him. I've met him, but I mean, look, any loss of human life is tragic. But someone who's, I mean, he's 31 years old. Obviously, he was very high profile, had a huge following, has a wife and 2 young kids. It just is tragic what happened to him. And again, as we had said earlier, all because, you know, we don't know why. We don't even have a suspect anymore. All because it's all likelihood someone didn't like what he was saying.
Yeah, which is, you know, sad to hear that. At the same time, let's talk about Charlie Kirk. The founder of Turning Point USA obviously made a big impact on campuses, as we saw the size of the crowd there today. I mean, he basically created a movement out of nothing.
He did. You know, Glenn, he went into the metaphorical lion's den where, I mean, I think that Chip mentioned it previously, that conservative speakers would go on to college campuses and routinely get shouted down and weren't even allowed to make their remarks, to engage in the quote unquote arena that that Teddy Roosevelt talked about. And Charlie Kirk went in there and he turned broad portions of campuses across the United States and encouraged young people to speak up and express their beliefs that didn't fit with the liberal orthodoxy that's so prevalent on college campuses right now. And, you know, he had great acclaim. He got a lot of criticism from the left for it, but he really, really did make a difference. And the fruits of his labor manifest themselves in the November 2024 re-election of Donald Trump.
Do we know their relationship? I know they were close, but like how they met or things that they had done together?
No, I don't know the genesis, Lou, of how they met. I'm willing to bet it probably had something to do with one of the younger Trump sons. I know that Eric is particularly close to J.D. Vance. You know, there's a whole younger youth Republican movement, or younger Republican movement, that is really the ideological vanguard of where the party's going over the next, you know, 20 to 30 years. And Charlie Kirk was clearly a leader in that group. I mean, this is a big loss just from an ideas perspective. And I think that you saw how Donald Trump, I mean, obviously the loss of anyone is tragic, but Donald Trump, the gravity of this, you know, for the loss of someone so young, but his mind and the brilliance that was there that is no longer going to be available to, you know, the conservative side of the aisle on a going forward basis. It's just a big loss for the country.
Do you see anybody possibly filling his void and picking up the mantle and carrying on what he started?
Well, yeah, I mean, Glenn, there will be many that will try, and there will be few that succeed. I think that, you know, there will be a time of grieving and reminiscing about all of the amazing things that Charlie Kirk did in his life. I think that over time that someone will fill that void. There's clearly a desire for a type of a right of center information distribution and, you know, and conversation on college campuses that have really just basically pushed that out of the public square entirely. So someone or some people, multiple people, will fill that void, but no one's going to do it as well as Charlie Kirk did.
Interesting. I'm reading online here that there was no security to get into the event, and one of the students that was there said that he basically printed out a scannable code, you know, the QR codes that we all are familiar with now. He brought it with him. He didn't need it to get into the amphitheater. He said, I was expecting when I got there that I'd have to pass through some kind of security, but that just wasn't a thing. No one checked the barcode or the QR code. There was no checkpoint to get in. It was literally anyone could walk in if they wanted.
Yeah, Lou, I mean, look, this is what he's been doing at college campuses across the United States for years, is that, these are supposed to be places where controversial ideas are thrown out and vigorous debate and discussion occurs. And you don't do it by walking through a metal detector or showing a student ID. This was an outdoor event open to the public at large. So, I mean, the sad part about this is it just means that in the future, there will likely have to be security at these events. And it will, going to Glen's question, it will make it that much harder for the next Charlie Kirk, because you're going to have to pay for all of this security. So you automatically now have raised the bar for a point of entry for someone to begin to capture an audience and speak to them. So, I mean, again, that's why this is so, I mean, the killing in itself is horrific, but the fact that it occurred on a public university, a college campus in Orem, Utah, which is a pretty conservative part of Utah, it just goes to show you that no place is safe.
Looking at back at his message, what was it, do you think, that attracted younger voters to his message, and what was he saying that resonated with them so much, and why was that?
Well, I'll try to avoid being overtly partisan in this, but Charlie Kirk spoke with a lot of common sense. He talked about issues of transgender rights and some of the lunacy that the far progressive left has about, men and women's locker rooms and stuff that you kind of scratch your head and you're like, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. But it fit within that liberal orthodoxy that's so prevalent on college campuses. He talked a lot about, he just got criticized recently for the stabbing of the Ukrainian refugee in Charlotte, saying that it was racially motivated. And like Van Jones on CNN and some other progressives, they immediately leapt to, this wasn't racial, it was the man had mental problems. And you could hear the man did have mental problems, but he also did say that the killing was racially, I got that white woman. So, I mean, again, Charlie Kirk just spoke truth to power. He did it in a way that 18 to 22-year-old college student could understand. I mean, it's largely, a lot of white men. Frankly, the group that progressive Democrats have gone to great lengths to beat down rhetorically over time. And that's why he resonated. He found an audience that was a big audience that wanted the messaging that he was distributing.
Matt Klink, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks a million, Lou.
See you later.
Yeah. It is ongoing all day, and Matt Klink has been with us, political analyst. We appreciate you sticking around. So many investigation in terms of so many people on the campus there. Police are having to figure out exactly what happened. And, I was thinking earlier too, Matt, there's going to be so much video, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to be able to assess that if, in fact, that shooter has disappeared. Hopefully there were so many phones there, they will be able to find out who the shooter was and where he or she is.
Always helps to unmute. Sorry. You hope that, not only do we get a lot of iPhone footage from the people that were in attendance, but you also hope that the university has a good video monitoring system, and that between all of that, hopefully they have, that the report that just came out is that they now have someone again in custody. Hopefully that will stick. It would certainly make things a lot easier if they had someone in custody, rather than to think that a potential murderer is in a situation like this, is running around loose in Utah.
Matt, on that interview we were just listening to, the student that was talking to our reporter there in Utah, I mean, he said absolutely no security at all. It was kind of just wide open. That's obviously something that's going to change at these kind of events on college campuses around the country.
Yeah, Glenn, I think that's a difference that you would see if an event like this were to happen at a UCLA or a USC or a Cal Berkeley, places like that. I think that you would have a much larger campus security presence. Mm-hmm. Again, I think that, life in the rest of America is not like life in a big city. Unfortunately, that quickly changes. And I think you're right that the level of security at these events now for anything that's deemed political or quasi-political is going to create some, it's going to create the need for more security. It's going to raise the cost of those events. And tragically, I think what it may end up doing is forcing these events off college campuses to private venues, which then the students lose, and the people putting out the information, they face a higher barrier to entry to get this information out.
Well, it's interesting, too, because this was a smaller area. Also, President Trump attempted assassination, also a small area, not a large city, not a big campus.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right. Butler, Pennsylvania is not what I would call, a thriving metropolis, and it's a small rural town in Pennsylvania. And this Orem, Utah, they do have universities, a couple of universities in that part of Utah, but it is by no means what I would call a big city. So I think it just highlights the fact that all of these things that are political are going to, the level of security is going to increase exponentially.
As we've pointed out already with his organization, Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk attracted a lot of young males in their 20s to the Republican Party and the conservative movement. Are you concerned about a negative, violent reaction to what happened today?
Glenn, I would certainly hope not. I think that the thing that impressed me most about Charlie Kirk is, he captured lightning in a bottle because he went around traditional media and used the means of communications that young college students use to really turn this debate. And he didn't do it with, fire and brimstone rhetoric. Yes, he did speak about some very serious issues from a conservative perspective, but he wasn't screaming and yelling. Charlie Kirk was a man of very rational, reasoned, well-constructed thought, and his arguments were what destroyed people, not the loudness of his voice or the booming of his microphone. So, I would hope that Charlie Kirk supporters will spend the appropriate amount of time remembering him for all of the amazing things that he did for the movement that he really started from 2016 on, in terms of bringing that perspective, that much needed perspective, to college campuses. And let's just hope that justice is done, that they find this person, whomever he or she was, and that they prosecute him to the maximum extent of the law. And hopefully that will serve as the greatest deterrent from this happening again.
All right, Matt, stay with us. We'll obviously come back to you again for more insight into the today's tragedy. Again, as you see there, President Trump confirming that conservative activist Charlie Kirk shot and killed today on the campus of Utah Valley University at one of his rallies where he debates college students.
President Trump has now asked that all flags be flown at half-staff. We're going to continue to monitor this breaking news and bring you the very latest as it becomes available. Glenn, Lou?
All right, thank you, Mary Beth. All right, let's head back to our political analyst, Matt Klink, who's been with us pretty much since this news broke late this morning. Again, 31-year-old Charlie Kirk, political activist, assassinated today on the campus of Utah Valley University. A sad day, and now we're hearing that the president wants to lower the flags around the nation.
Yeah, Glenn, I've already seen the White House flag is already lowered, and I'm sure that the rest of the nation will follow suit. So it just goes to show, that this was someone that, a young man at 31 years of age. He definitely made a mark and had a huge impact. And don't forget, he started this back in 2016. So he was, and I was just reading up on a little more history on him. He recognized that there was a entire set of Americans that were not adequately receiving information, and he created Turning Point. And Charlie Kirk is one of those people that was a boundary pusher, and he certainly made a difference. So, and again, as I said, he was close to the president. He was instrumental in Donald Trump's victory in November of 2024. So a big loss for those on the conservative side of the aisle.
Well, Matt, you know, it's really interesting because we do see shootings pretty frequently here in the United States, almost on a daily basis. But when it comes to politics like this, you know, we cover them and we assume that they're going to be okay. Yes, they get shot, but they're going to be okay. And this is just, you know, as journalists following this and then the news coming that once you see the video, apparently, you know, he didn't make it. And I think, you know, that's a whole nother level, takes it to, I mean, the shooting and just injuries, but then the actual death and assassination, essentially, even though he's not a politician.
Exactly. But he was someone that was, I would say, politics adjacent, and he definitely had his finger on probably the most dynamic part of the new Republican base. That really was an election turner and boded well for the future for Republicans in terms of mobilizing young college-age men to vote Republican. And I think you're right, Lou, is that, you know, it's probably human nature to assume that, you know, oh, that's horrible. I hope that he or she's okay, as we started our conversation when talking about this. But then to hear that he was actually killed, you know, I'm reminded that, you know, roughly a month or 6 weeks ago, there was a killing of a Democratic politician in Minnesota. So, I mean, this is happening with increased regularity. And I think that, you know, the biggest challenge right now is that I'm just looking online between interviews, and everybody is speculating about what the solution should be when they don't even know what the cause is yet. Yeah. And I think that for Charlie Kirk, we need to figure out, you know, one, if they have the right person in custody, two, what possessed this person to do what she or he did, and then ultimately figure out why it happened, and then we can design a solution. But, you know, anyone who wants to start attributing a political agenda to why this happened or what should be done, they're getting way ahead of themselves, and they're really doing it to serve their own interests. And I think, sorry to talk long here, but I think case in point, Gavin Newsom's remarks were very thoughtful. And for your viewers, remember that Charlie Kirk and Gavin Newsom did a very long interview early this summer that was a very informational interview, where this was the one where Gavin Newsom actually said that he didn't agree with men playing in women's sports, and he broke some news and really upset a lot of Democrats. So clearly Gavin Newsom, you know, they bonded in that interview, because it was a couple-hour interview, and Gavin Newsom's comments, I think, were very appropriate, as were Antonio Villaraigosa's, about there being no room in the political debate for violence. You know, I think that's a good starting point, and then now let's find out what happened.
All right, as always, Matt Klink, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate you being with us throughout the day. Please stick around, though, because we'll probably likely come back to you. All right, joining us again, Matt Klink, political analyst. Matt, thank you for being here with us today.
Yes, thanks, Lou.
We are hearing now that there's going to be a press conference from Utah starting at 3 o'clock. So it heads up to our viewers that we will be taking that live when the 3 o'clock newscast starts today. A lot of information will likely come out of that presser, because it's still unclear if the shooter has been apprehended. Someone has been arrested or apprehended, but according to some media outlets, that was not the shooter.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflicting information around the news right now and on the World Wide Web. About the only thing that we do know with consistency is that Charlie Kirk was shot and killed. Some of the videos floating around are quite graphic in portraying that killing, not for the faint of heart, for sure. And I do think the thing that has been I think hopefully helpful is that most of the comments have been very thoughtful and have praised Charlie Kirk for his ability to at least be willing to have the difficult conversations and do, you know, people may not have liked what he said, but he was by no means a bomb thrower. He was someone who was an intellectual who had conservative leanings, but was never afraid. I mean, listen to what he was saying. Prove me wrong. And he wanted people with different point of views to give it their best argument and prove him wrong. And I will tell you, Lou, few did.
What do you mean by he wasn't a bomb thrower?
Meaning that he wasn't one to use caustic and, caustic rhetoric and name calling and, pounding his hands and waving his hands all over the place that we had seen, some talking heads and politicians on both sides of the aisle do. He was someone that he would win you over by the intellectual strength of his argument. He was never afraid to debate. He wanted the conversation to be difficult because he knew that he could literally beat the other person with words in any debate. And that's what made him such a force, was that he didn't talk down to people, but he was a really, really good arguer, and he knew what he was talking about.
No, you're right. I mean, it was an honest debate. He sat there. A lot of times the people he were debating with would get a little heated, and he would calmly give his side of the issue and would usually settle things down. And as you can see by the video, he attracted huge crowds at these college campuses. So what he was doing was resonating with a lot of people, especially young males in their 20s.
Yeah, Glenn, he did. You're right. I mean, if you look at the image of him on stage, it was literally him in a chair in an amphitheater with 2,000 people's eyes on him, and he had a microphone. I mean, talk about making yourself vulnerable, from an intellectual perspective to others. He said, "Bring it on. I can take all your arguments, and I will respond back in kind, and may the best ideas win." And that's why Turning Point USA was so powerful, because his ideas were winning. They did turn the tide, especially for young men that, frankly, the traditional Republican and Democratic parties had forgotten and had gone out of their way to emasculate with a whole bunch of, frankly, some pretty wacky ideas.
Do you think that's why President Trump liked him so much?
I think that President Trump actually liked him as a person, and I also think that he knew that, young male voters were the proverbial wild card in the Trump 2024 election, that historically the youth vote has gone Democrat, and the young minority vote, Black and Latino, was Democrat as well. And Donald Trump pulled a lot of those groups away toward the Republican Party. And they're staying if you look at the polling data. And that's where Charlie Kirk's influence will be long in the conservative movement, is that those gains, I think, are going to hold.
No, I think it might surprise a lot of people. It wasn't just white males in their 20s. It was also Black males, Latino males, and Asian males.
Exactly. Yeah, it was basically young men, again, who, they weren't getting the good jobs. They weren't, a lot of the rules that were put out by government were were not helping them. The rhetoric was really, especially on the Democratic side of the aisle, was really not favorable to young men in general. And Charlie Kirk gave them an outlet to not only express that anger through words, but also to offer them some practical solutions in the Republican Party. Obviously, that didn't play well in Southern California writ large, but he was very popular even on Southern California college campuses.
Well, and unfortunately, it did anger somebody. It angered somebody enough today that he was assassinated.
Yep. That's the.
Are we saying assassinated even though he wasn't a politician, or is that? How do we say that? Maybe just shot?
I don't know. I mean, look. I mean, he was assassinated. The person went out with a point in mind and killed him in front of a large public audience. That to me is an assassination. You don't have to be in politics, to the best of my knowledge. It doesn't matter, Lou. I mean, look, I think ultimately it doesn't matter what you call it. I think that the end result is that a bright young light was taken from us today unnecessarily. And we really need to find out why it happened before we can start pointing fingers. And this is the bad part about social media. There is the vitriol and the rhetoric is ramped up on both sides. And it is just, it's hurtful and harmful and nasty. And again, that's not what, first of all, that's not how Charlie Kirk did business. And second of all, I think that he would want to have a more sedate and intellectual conversation. So, you know, let's hope we get some good information quickly at this 3 o'clock news conference.
Well, and also, too, you said unnecessary, and I totally agree with you on that. Clearly, I think everyone listening would agree that all of it's unnecessary. So we both appreciate you being here with us today. A lot of information to take in and to absorb, and we appreciate it.